Hi guys, we're here today with our TRS 21. We're doing some rebuilds on it. The TRS is for spark free. That's the version we have here. So this is the machine. We're going to be rebuilding the head of the pump and all the internals, such as the rods, pistons, and crankshaft mounts. Some rebuild kits we offer are the TR21X2, which is this. This is a full rebuild kit. The TR21X3, it's just the pistons and rods. Bearings and gaskets are included as well. And then we have the X4, which is just the head with the valves in it. So we're going to be doing the full rebuild, but first we're going to replace the valves and do the TR21X1 rebuild. So to skip that part, if you're going to do the full rebuild or the X3 or X4, skip ahead in the video. We have a link in the description. The X2 includes everything you need, including the new head with valves. We have new cylinders. We have crankshaft mounts with connecting rods and pistons. It also comes with all the gaskets and screws for connecting mounts. So let's start with just the head of the unit. I'm going to need some tools, and these apply for everything. So we're going to need the flathead screwdriver. The bigger the better. Probably a 1/4 inch will do. We have a number 2 Phillips screwdriver. Also have a drill, makes it easier. We have a 5/32 and a 3/16 Allen wrench. I have a dead blow mallet, a 3/8 socket attached to an impact driver shank, and a needle nose pliers. You can also use a tweezer or a jeweler's pliers. It'll be much easier. So the first thing we're going to do with this pump, we're going to take off the head. We're looking at the TR21X1 rebuild right now. So there's some Allen screws right here, 3/16, 3 of them. See the handle part? Comes right off. Next we have the head unit. It has 4 Allen screws, all 3/16 as well. Okay. Next I'm going to take off this piece of plastic just to make it easier to get the head off. Just using a Phillips drill bit right here. There's 5 screws on this piece of plastic. Keep them all together. This one's a little bit different. I don't know if you can even see that, but this one is a little smaller, and there's 4 of these. So now this whole piece of plastic will come off. It'll have you access this valve right here. So this is a pressure shut off. I'm just going to disconnect it. Just these 2 prongs. And now I have my head separate from the unit. Next thing I'm going to do is take off these pistons and cylinders. So cylinders will pull right off. And that's the extent of those. Nothing to detach. Now we have to go inside and get these rods and pistons out. We'll leave that for later in the video, and first we'll go over the head. So here's our head unit. Now let's do the TR21X1 rebuild, which is just going to be the valves inside here. There is some brass screws with flathead, and these are very sensitive, so you cannot use a small screwdriver, and you can't strip it at all because it strips really easily. So give it a nice force down while you're unscrewing them, just to ensure that you don't strip any of these screws. I've stripped a few myself, and it's not fun. So there's going to be 2 of the larger size and 2 of the smaller size. These are basically just plugs on top of the valves that are the inlet and outlet valves of your unit. Now let's look inside. You can see there are 2 outlet valves here, 2 inlets here, and we're going to replace them by pulling them out. The outlet valves are very easy to get out. Flip it over, and they're going to come right out. See, there's springs and a valve, so 2 springs, 2 valves. These come in a kit with the TR21X1 rebuild. Put those aside. Next part's a little bit harder. There is an O-ring on the inside of the inlet valves. We're going to have to take that O-ring off. You can use needle nose pliers, possibly, or tweezers. Recommended the smallest tip you can possibly find. As you can see, this O-ring is rather small. It takes a tiny tool to put that on later. When you get the new one in the kit, make sure you have something that's good. The next part inside here, under the O-ring, there's a little white circle around the valve itself. That piece will just slide off, so I'm just going to push the valve down, and it should slide right at the top. Now you can see my valve coming out the bottom here. There's going to be 2 of these, so you have to do this twice. I'm just going to pull it right out. And that is the inlet valve. Now I'm back on the top side of the head. We're going to dump this out, and what comes out is that small white ring that I mentioned, along with a spring. Now the spring has to be oriented like this, and this white ring goes on top of the spring. A cone with a little hat on it. And then the O-ring would go on top of that. Let's just try to... well, that's the point. So I'll put this aside. We no longer need this valve. And then the same thing with the other side. I'm going to show you an alternate way to take off this old spring and valve combo. This way is a little bit easier, less refinement. All I'm going to do is push the valve open, just like that. I'm going to take my wire cutter, cut the bottom right off. Now everything should fall right off the top. Push it through. And that's that. It's a little bit of an easier way to take off the valves. So if you're not looking to replace them with the same valves, go ahead and do that. So putting this back together, I'm going to take the parts from my X1 rebuild kit, which includes the valves, includes the spring, and includes the white PCFE ring, along with the O-ring, very small, as we saw before. To start putting the valve back in, first flip over the head, push the plastic part into the hole it goes in, flip it back over, and then leave that valve flat on the table. Take the spring, the larger side would be going down, you go right over the top. I have a tweezers here to make it much easier to slide parts over. Just push the spring all the way to the bottom as far as it goes. Next is this small white PTFE ring. I'm going to use the tweezer again and just lay it on top. And then push it down as well. The last part of this valve rebuild is getting the O-ring on top. I'm just going to place it on this Allen wrench, place the Allen wrench on top of the valve, and then use this tweezers to slide the O-ring down and around the valve. And there it is. We have everything stuck in place. The groove is where the O-ring sits, and it holds that PTFE retaining ring, which holds the spring in the down position. You can test it by flipping it over and just pushing the other side and make sure it retracts automatically. And we know that's good. For the other side of the valves, I'm going to just drop in the plastic piece and then place the spring right on top. The spring is not tapered or anything, just either way is fine. Should go in easy. And that's the outlet valves. Much easier than the inlet valves. Last thing I'm going to do is just put my plugs on. The two small ones go on the inlet, two larger plugs go on the outlet. The valve rebuild also comes with O-rings that you can replace right here if you need to. These are pretty fresh, I'm going to keep them on. Save the new ones for later. All I'm doing is putting it hand tight. I don't want to try to do any harder because it might strip the slot. You can see this one right here is starting to get beat up. I really want to be careful with that one. And that's it for the valves. The last part of the rebuild kit is going to be a little screen gasket. I'm actually showing a different head. So this is the inlet, and you can see that the screen gasket is right inside. You can replace that if it's clogged up. On this head, I'm not going to take that off, but it will be under there. Now we're going to go back to our full rebuild. So I put the previous head aside. We're going to get a brand new one from this kit. So, keep my kit out here. The first thing you'll notice in the kit is there are many more pieces than the other kits because we're doing everything. This even includes the mounts for the connecting rods. So we're going to have to take apart this entire head. To start removing the head, I'm going to take out these two Allen screws on the front of the unit. This will take apart the pump head. It's a 5/32 Allen wrench. Now that I have these two removed, I'm going to take off this top cover. 2 Phillips screws is all it takes. And that'll just make it easier to get to the rest of our unit. I'm going to have to remove these 4 bolts right here. I'm going to use my 3/8 socket on this drill to remove these 4 bolts. I use the impact driver, makes it a lot easier. So they come right out. And now to take off this plate. Okay. You can see both pistons right here. They're still connected to the rod. Just the crankshaft. So I'm going to remove this front piece, and it's going to take a little bit of pulling. It's stuck on there by a bearing. Let's try to get that off. The complete rebuild kit will come with new gaskets, these little paper guys. Don't worry about those. Now I'm pressing my screwdriver between the crankshaft mount right here and the head right here. I'm doing that because I know I have new crankshaft mounts to put on, so I don't worry about these old ones. Great for prying. Alright, as you can see, there's a bearing on the inside that was press fit into the crankshaft, made it a little bit hard to get off, but don't have to worry about it now. Now you'll see inside, turn the pump around, that there are 2 pistons, 2 rods, and then 2 crankshaft mounts. This all has to come off. We're going to start by removing the screws on the inside of the crankshaft mounts. There's going to be 4 of them. They're going to be a 3/16 Allen wrench. I'll break them loose first. There's 2 on this mount and then 2 on the mount on the other side. We'll have to rotate it in just a second. Now you shouldn't need to take these out completely. At some point, both mounts and both rods will just slide right off the crankshaft. Rods slide out from this roller bearing on the inside, makes it super easy. And the mounts should come as a pair. And now we have the heart of our pump out. So there's the 2 mounts that are held together by these 4 screws. As I just loosened them, I didn't take them completely out. If you're using the X3 rebuild, just comes with this, then you don't need to dispose of these. If you have the new rebuild kit, the X2 that I have here, you can just get rid of these for now. Your old pistons and rods, those are also done. Get rid of those. We have new ones. So we'll take a look inside the X2 rebuild again. You see that we have new pistons. We have a whole new head. We have 2 new cylinders. We have gaskets, O-rings, and screws. These screws are for the crankshaft mounts that I have right here. So I'm going to start by just putting these in, not completely, so I can slide them right back on. Before I put this pump together, I'm just going to clean out the inside of any bearing grease and buildup that's been splashing around in there due to my failed gaskets. To make it easier to put everything together, you can use some lubrication on the shaft. Not too much is needed, as this really should be sticking to the shaft pretty firmly. So the first thing I'm going to do to reassemble this pump after cleaning it, I'm going to just put one of the crankshaft mounts into the rod. You can see it spins nice there. This one's going to be the back. And I'm going to slide the mounts on together. I've already hand tightened them. They're not tight by any means. So this goes all the way back till it makes contact with that plastic ring. And then take your second rod, slide it on the front, and there you go. Take my 3/16 Allen wrench. I want to equally tighten both sets of screws. So I'll do one here, one turn here, maybe a little less there. Now my goal is to get the gap showing on the inside on both sides of the crankshaft mounts to be the exact same. I'm going to rotate it, tighten the bottom ones, same thing, tighten them evenly, make sure that gap stays same on both sides. Now that I have that done, the rods are still free to move back and forth on the crankshaft mounts. They're not really tightened down by anything. This will make it much easier to put our cylinders on later. Next piece is this front cap. I'm going to put it back on. Now the bearing is a press fit. You may need a mallet to get it back on properly. Always use a dead blow mallet to avoid damaging your items. You can see I have my dead blow mallet. I'm just going to tap the cover on. And then I can use my 5/32 Allen wrench to tighten these two screws. Now what I did to stand this up is hang the power switch off the edge of the table. I just didn't want to smash that if the unit was like this. I can now put it back down, continue on. Next thing I have to put on is my metal plate right here. But before I do that, I'm going to open up the new gasket kit that this thing comes with. I'm going to put in my black gaskets first out of that rebuild kit that we got. And then there's also included 2 white gaskets. They're just rectangles basically. This goes between the aluminum plate that the cylinders mount on and the rest of the pump unit. Try to line up the holes best you can for the screws to go through. Now I already have my screws in place, 4 of them. This is the 3/8 head of the socket that we're going to use again on the drill, or impact driver. So I'm just going to tighten these. I recommend the star pattern, just like tightening a car tire. And I can see our cylinders sticking through. They may not seem like they are perfectly centered on the holes, and that's okay. We still have some freedom to slide around. I'll take out my new cylinders. Just slide it right on. Just kind of give it a little jiggle until it's perfectly lined up and goes right in. That's all it takes. Don't try to force anything that doesn't want to move. You can always take it apart and add grease if you need to make the bearing slide better on the bearing mount shaft. It is a little tough. Make sure to keep both cylinders down as you're pushing them. You can see the pistons inside are just gonna put one up and one down for now. Make sure they don't collide. Nothing should ever collide with the top. You can see the piston does not reach past the end of the cylinder, and that's good. I'm going to take these 2 new gaskets out of my rebuild kit. These are O-rings that just go on top of the cylinder. They just lay right in. So now I have 2 O-rings on each cylinder and we're ready to rebuild the rest of the head. I'll take this cover first. Just a piece of sheet metal basically. Switch my drill bit back to a Phillips number 2 bit. And it's just 2 screws. They are the shinier silver looking screws of the pack. I know you have a whole bunch on your table right now. Don't go too crazy tightening these. It is aluminum threads that you're tightening into, and it doesn't really matter if they're tight or not. It's just a cover. You're going to have some heat sinking out of here when the pump is running, so it is important to have it. But for this step, it's not very important how tightened it is. I now grab my new head. This has all the valves already built into it. This comes with the X2 full rebuild kit. You're going to make sure you put your pressure switch on the right side. It's going to be over here where these plugs plug into it. So I'm just going to set it on top right now. And we're going to have to line up these 4 longer socket screws. So they screw into aluminum as well. So again, it's a little hard to not over tighten them, but make sure you don't strip those threads. It's also a 3/16 Allen wrench. I'm going to do a star pattern once again. Now it's very important to tighten these all equally. You can see I've done it already. 4 socket head screws. They all give compression to those O-rings we just put on top of the cylinders and keeps a good seal. Last thing we got to do with this head is just attach these 2 wires. The blue spade goes to the bottom and the yellowish one goes to the top. It doesn't really matter, you can have it either way. And that's about it for the rebuild. All we got to do is put our covers back on. So I have this plastic cover first. You're going to see there's 1 mounting screw here. That's the one that I told you to keep an eye out for. It's a little bit fatter than the rest. You should have 5 screws for this thing. It goes on the power cord side. It just goes right underneath. Screw goes through the top into the plastic. To Phillips number 2 again. And then we have 4 more screws. They're going to go 1 here, and then 2 on the other side. Now there should already be a hole for these. Try to find that same hole. It'll make it much easier. The last thing to do, just put this handle right back on. It's 3 Allen screws, they're all 3/16 again. Doesn't matter too much to follow a star pattern, it's just 3 of them in a triangle. Just tighten them all evenly, and the pump is assembled. I'm going to plug it in right now just to make sure it works. Make sure you don't hear any kind of knocking or see the pump jumping around on the table. That would be indication of a collision. This seems just fine. And that's it. It's easy as that. Thanks for watching our TRS 21 rebuild.